Welcome to the Law Life Podcast. Today's guest is the fabulous Latrice Burks-Palmerio. What's up, Latrice?
Hey, Shana, how's it going?
It's
Lovely to be
going
here.
really well. I'm loving the blonde. Talk to me about this blonde.
Thank you. So my grandmother was like Tina Turner's like doppelganger, and she would travel, and
Mmm.
like people would say, "Oh my goodness, will you sign this?" And she says, "Look, I'm a Christian. I can't lie. I'm not like Tina Turner." But she
Mm-hmm.
wore blonde, and since the wedding, I got married in like September, and I wanted
Congratulations.
to like thank you. I wanted to do something different, so I
Mm.
ever since then I've been Miss Blonde. I think it's a good contrast to my chocolate skin, so I
It
get a
looks
lot of compliments.
beautiful.
Thank
You
you.
really pull it off very well. Looks gorgeous. So, you are a former applicant of mine. I
Yes.
know that you have a great story and you're doing a lot of great things. So let's kind of bring it back. I want to learn about talk about your childhood. What was Latrice's childhood like? Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Originally I am from Shaker Heights, Ohio. It's a suburb of Cleveland. So
Mhm.
Cleveland is big and they have like different suburbs. I grew up in a very diverse like neighborhood and schooling. I had Jewish friends, Italian friends, Asian friends, like literally like you name it, I had those friends.
Mhm.
And growing up they told us that we live in a bubble, that Shaker Heights is not like the rest of the world. I go
Mhm.
on to college and I find that to be true. Like I grew
Mhm.
up, my
In what
father,
way?
in what way? Like the rest of the world isn't as like integrated as where I
Mhm.
grew up. So
Mhm.
like I feel like DEI wasn't a thing that I had to grow up like using that term. It was
Mhm.
just it was just
What was the term you just used?
DEI, like diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Got it.
Like
Okay, because
you
you
didn't
grew up around inclusion, so you didn't feel it as much. So
exactly
when you went to college, where did you go to college?
the
Ohio State?
in Ohio, which is
Mm,
like a small liberal arts school called the College of Worcester. So it was
mhm.
like an hour and a half away from where I grew up.
And what
Um,
was that like?
Much different because it was in like southern Ohio, and I saw
Mm.
Confederate flags places. I'm telling you, when I say like culture shock, it was a major
Why
culture
didn't
shock.
you run? Why didn't you leave? I mean, did you not have that option? That would have
My
I mean, I
mom,
can't imagine what you felt like seeing a Confederate flag.
it was hard. It was, and I remember calling my mom and saying like, so she wanted me to go to like a bigger state school, but I knew I was law school bound because I wanted to be a
Mhm.
lawyer since middle school, right? So like she wanted me to go to a bigger school. I wanted to take that like liberal arts approach because I thought it would increase my chances of getting into a great law school. And I do think that
Mhm.
helped.
Mhm.
Um, but my mom, I remember calling her and say like, "Oh my God, like did I make a mistake?" And she's like, "Well, you got to stick it out because you chose that school."
Ah,
Um,
she
and
gave you
then
the
she
mama
had,
lesson. The mama
oh,
lesson came out. Okay.
and I know you
So
know what that's about.
oh, yeah, I definitely do.
Yeah,
So that was 4 years. I mean, when we talk about, if we're going to bring up, of course, I know the race issues that you dealt with even during your bar prep and the feelings
yeah,
that you had. That was the first time I've ever, we'll talk about that in a little bit, had that. And it was kind of like, I wanted to make sure that you had that support. But, what was that like in college for you then, growing up in a non or going to college in a non-inclusive town and school? You wanna talk
it
about
was
that a little?
hard. Absolutely. So I felt, and I know now I'm a trustee of my alma mater. So I speak
Wow.
to students like it's a full circle moment,
Look
right?
at you. Mhm.
And like speaking to students, they're still facing the same things I face. And it's
Mm.
like, why? Like, and I
So what did you face?
just like being called slurs while like walking down the street and like going to a
Horrific.
restaurant off of campus and having that be like being other, being looked at a certain way, like all of those things that I didn't grow up experiencing. So
Wow. I feel like it's usually the flip, right? Because I
yeah.
grew up in a very Jewish community and
Mhm.
it was very vanilla, very unilateral, right? It was like it felt and I always wanted friends from all different walks of life and I was like craving it almost because
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel like I have a lot of different cultures in me as it is and typically through music. But
Exactly.
and so for me and then I went to college And that's where I met like my first African American friend, my first Asian friend, my first, Latino friend. And it was like, I can be friends with whoever I want and I don't have to feel. So you had the flip experience.
Right.
And yeah, I'm sure it was rough. And then did you make friends that had your back like during that time?
Absolutely. And
Hmm.
it was one of those things where I felt the need to be like a, like advocate on campus while also getting good grades. Like one of
Wow.
the reasons why I got into USC is because I slayed in college. I did well and I wrote a
USC
thesis.
Law School.
That's right. I went to
Okay.
USC Law School. So
Yeah,
it's
look
just
at
like,
you. Hmm.
yeah, it was a challenge. I felt like I had to like take on more than my other peers did. Like
Hmm.
I had to be like, active and
And you
focused on
had
my
to watch
grades
your back, right? I
and
mean,
watch my back.
and watch
Yeah.
your back. And I mean, what was the amount? Do you remember statistics? I mean, you're a trustee now, like of the amount of Black students at the school.
It's under 10%, I think. I
Wow,
still think it's still,
it's
and
quite
I
low.
know they try to like increase diversity. A lot of students of color who do end up going leave. Like
Mm,
like they would leave a toxic job that they don't feel comfortable
right,
in. Like
right.
same thing.
Like "You Won't Break My Soul," right, from
I,
Beyonce. I was listening to that before,
I
where she
love that
talks.
song.
I love that. I love her and her new country album. Okay, we could have a whole episode about that. But
Yes.
okay, so um, thank you for sharing that. You prevail through this uh instance of feeling adverse and feeling different, but you of course are a fighter, right?
Yeah.
um and always trekking forward, and then of course you have that mom support too. And then you decide, so you knew you wanted to be a lawyer, you said, since middle school.
Right.
Middle school, okay. And did you know what type of lawyer you wanted to be, or
Yeah.
where'd the inspo come from in middle school?
So in middle school, I'll be honest, I have a brother who was troublesome, in and out of trouble, started in school, and there is like a school to prison pipeline. Like there's
Mm,
like students that like struggle with like behavioral issues like my older brother does. A
mm-hmm,
lot of
mm-hmm.
those people end up going straight to jail because like society doesn't know what to do with them.
Of
So I
course.
wanted to be like a prosecutor, to be the person in the room to say, okay, this person has, a history with this. Well, maybe we shouldn't give them, this harsh, sentence. Maybe we should give them this instead, because I
Like
knew that like,
rehabilitation options.
absolutely. And I know
Yeah.
like prosecutors have like discretion. So I wanted to use that to help people like my brother who needed a better fighting chance. So
How is he doing now?
he's doing well. Thank you so much for asking. He's like, he has twins. He's like
Whoa.
family guy now. And here's the thing. Some people, it just takes them longer to like mature and grow up. Like,
Totally.
and we grew up in the same house, same mom, same dad. There are three
Mhm.
of us. I have a younger brother, and
Mhm.
I was the only girl of three. So I used to get yelled at if I didn't get A's, and meanwhile they both barely passed school. So like,
Isn't that interesting? So
very.
I have a we have a like very similar connection at times, and even during the bar prep. Like, so I'm one of five, and I think my siblings are gonna kick my you know what for saying this, but I don't even know if they're gonna listen. They say they listen, but who knows? Um,
Right.
but I was pushed really hard.
Yeah.
And they're all doing their thing, but I think like sometimes parents see it in the kid, and they right, and they know the kid to push, and they know the kid that maybe needs a little backing off. So that's
Right.
interesting. All right. So you get into USC Law School. What did that feel like? That is an amazing law school. I went to USC undergrad.
Yeah.
So you get in and you didn't have to go anywhere first. You got in like right off the LSAT, right? After your fourth year.
Well, yeah, I actually applied to law school twice. I applied right after, like right when I was in college, but my parents passed away. My mother passed when I was spring break of my first year, and then my dad passed the
So
summer
sorry.
going into junior year. So by the time I graduated, I had no parental support, and that
Wow.
and I had to take, honestly, I took a gap year, and I worked at Munger Tolles and Olson. I was a fellow and like a litigation
Let's tell
intern.
our listeners what that firm is. Is that a big law firm? Big law?
Yeah, so it's a big firm.
Mhm,
They're ranked high. They're AM 100.
mhm.
They work on great cases, and I learned a lot from them as an intern and as a fellow. Like I'm very grateful, and that actually brought me to California. I was the only fellow not from California. Everyone else was, but
The
I
job brought you to Cali.
yep, the job and the fellowship.
Got it. Wait, losing both parents during college. So I lost my mom. It'll be her 3-year anniversary this May.
I'm sorry
Um,
for your loss.
yeah, and you as well. Thank you. But then, like, so your mom and your dad passed away within a year or two of each
Yeah,
other
yeah. While
during
I was in
college.
college and
I mean,
doing all the things.
how do you even get through that? I mean, when my mom passed away, I mean, I understand the perseverance side, excuse me,
Yeah.
um, because you just do what you got to do, right? But then another parent. So who passed away first, your mom or your dad?
My mom, and it was very sudden. It was deep vein thrombosis, so a blood clot from
Mhm.
her leg traveled to her
Wow.
heart. I was on
Shocking.
spring break. I was home when it happened. I'm grateful to have been home when it happened. I don't know if I could live with myself if I wasn't there. You know.
You would.
Um,
You would do what you had to do, but it would be hard. You it's blessing, gratitude that you had that. And
yeah,
then a year later, your father passes away.
yeah, and I
And
was
how did he pass away? Can I
he
ask?
got hurt on the job. On he was like a RNA, and there was a patient with a history of violence that like of violence that beat on him pretty bad, and he passed after we tried to sue. It was going to cost more than it would have otherwise. It was a whole thing.
That's a lot of
Um,
trauma.
it
That's a
is, and
lot. Like your college
I buried it.
experience.
Yeah,
Yeah. So you suppressed it. That's what you did.
for
Okay.
sure, and I persevered.
And you
Yeah,
persevered and you're like, I got to go. Like, I
yeah.
just got to work through this and go. I mean,
But
that
it
is,
pops up, and I feel like my message to any like listener who has any type of trauma is like you can't bury it forever because it'll pop up in other
yes,
arenas of your life, like
yes.
like celebrations might trigger something, and they do for me. Like I got married, and like I didn't have my dad walk me down the aisle, and like that was hard.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
There's feelings with that. So
Yeah.
don't bury it. Go to therapy. I love therapy. Everyone should
Me
go to therapy,
too. I don't know why so many people are anti-therapy because
especially men.
here's the thing. Yeah, a lot of men do. But here's the thing. Like, I feel like, because I'm in my 40s now, and I feel like, everyone has a level of trauma up until like their childhood trauma, let's say all the way till 20 years old. And
Right.
everyone has different levels of it. And
Mhm.
then like you form relationships. A lot of people get married, they get engaged, they whatever it is. And if you don't deal with that stuff by the time you're in these committed relationships, and definitely by the time that you have children, right?
Talk about it.
It comes so much into the relationship and it can really impact the relationship. It
Right.
can make you depressed.
Yep.
It definitely can make you feel anxious. It can make you feel suffocated.
Right.
And you have to be whole yourself.
Yeah.
And so I think there's millions for sure. And I know there's so many people talking about this stuff that are walking around with grief, with
Yeah.
past traumas, with things that they have not made peace with, right? And they are suffocated with it. So for anyone listening, go to therapy,
Go to
talk to
therapy.
somebody, a good therapist, because there's some crappy therapists out there, but
Right.
someone good and reputable that can really help you. So that is really, really important. And so eventually it came up. Did it come up during law school? So you started USC.
For sure. And there
Mhm.
would be days where I just couldn't leave my bed, and it's like I should be like I wanted this for so long. Like I
In
should be
law school, you
in law.
find yourself, so you're pushed through college and then you get into law school and you're like, I don't feel right. Something like that.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
then that's when I started therapy, Shauna, and I've been in
Mm,
therapy ever since then. I think it was my
so
first
smart.
year. I think maybe first semester or second semester, but I came to realize, okay, like I've been a trooper this whole time. It's okay for me, and it's about allowing yourself to be vulnerable and to say, all right, now I need help. Like
Yes.
and
Yes. And
everyone has
also
to
when
do
you
that.
do, and I have a similar journey, and when you do that, the work doesn't stop. It never stops.
Exactly.
And because then new things come up or then you change or then something else happens, right? Like a new death or a new trauma that could, kind of come up and you have to have the tools. And at that point, maybe you have the tools for some things, but not everything. So you have to keep working at it. And that's what, we mean when we say work. And when we talk about the bar exam, right? And before we go into the bar exam, so what was USC law like? Did you live on campus downtown LA?
Yeah, so I lived on campus for all 3 years. I loved USC. I definitely felt, because as someone who grew up like, I would say like lower middle class in
Hmm.
Cleveland, we were kind of paycheck to paycheck, but we had our own
Hmm.
house and we had cars, the whole thing. But I definitely saw that there was like me and a lot of my peers who like came from wealth,
Hmm.
and I eventually became to like appreciate, and I told myself, okay, Latrice, like your kids are gonna be like these kids that come, because I made a commitment to like work really hard so I can give my kids the life that I saw a lot of my peers have. So that's kind
Got
of
it.
been, and
So it was
I was underestimated.
motivating being at USC because USC, I'm a Trojan, so don't come down on me, Trojans, but it's the University of Spoiled Children.
For sure.
There is a lot of money in that school, right? A ton of
Right,
money in that school going in and out. And so you definitely see the nicest cars, the nicest clothing, designer bags. If you don't
right.
come from that, you're looking around going like, okay, well, I'm no different than them. I'm going to graduate with the same degree. And I'm going to excuse me for my listeners, I have this little cough. But I'm going to do this, and that pushed you, that motivated you. So, what was the inclusivity like? So more diverse, right? But
More diverse,
not
yeah.
how's the law school though? I would say
I thought we were around like 10, maybe 10, 12% there. I mean,
mhm,
our classes were small, so they were about, I think, like under 200. The
mhm.
numbers were okay. And
Okay.
I felt great. I started this organization called the like Women of Color Collective. So me and like
Too.
a bunch of like women of all different backgrounds formed
I
this
would have been
group.
part of that group for
Of
sure
course.
with
Yeah,
you. Yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm.
So that was great. And then
Very cool. So law
I
school, it sounds like law school was pretty smooth sailing for you for the most part. Except for you know, well, not except because it was a big thing where you realized I need to get into therapy. So you dealt with a lot of the mental tolls that the previous childhood traumas and the
yeah.
college trauma had on you. And then you got through law school. Did you enjoy law school? Did you
I
like it?
did. I had my favorite classes. Like I
Mhm.
loved con law. I was a TA for this like pre-law class that I was
Mhm.
paid, and I was a research assistant. I graduated with two jobs, my clerkship and my big
Amazing.
firm gig. I was definitely underestimated, and some of my peers were shocked that I got a clerkship and they didn't.
Aw.
And
Why would
and
they be shocked?
well, that and they didn't apply across the board like I did. I went to
Mhm.
Connecticut to clerk, but then I had my
Mhm.
big law job at McGuire Woods waiting for me back in LA. So I
Got it.
just cast a wide net, which is what I was advised, and which is what I would pass on to anyone listening to this. Like in law school, even if you feel like, oh, even if you're told, oh, you might not get this, you might not get that, still apply, because I was told I might not get my firm job and I might not get my clerkship, and I got it. I got them both. So
Right. It's that self-doubt, right? That
yeah,
people, it's funny because other people make people feel that way, but you can't allow other people to make you feel that way. That's
exactly.
where you got to have that confidence, that self-love to go like, if there's a maybe here, I'm going for it. And I'm not going to
Absolutely.
listen to anybody. And so that definitely comes into the bar prep a lot because
Yeah.
there's previous tutors, excuse me, parents, people always telling applicants like maybe this isn't the right, kind of job line for you. Maybe career path, maybe you should go elsewhere. And it's just so not true. It's
Yeah.
unbelievably not true. Okay.
Yeah.
So how was the bar exam? Let's talk about the bar exam. I want to spend some good time here. So
For
you take the
sure.
bar the first time. What did you do
I
to prepare?
I used Barbary. I fell in line with all of my other peers, and
But
McGuire
that's
Woods.
understandable. So, sorry, not to cut you off, but like
Yeah.
Barbary, USC has a pretty high passage rate, right?
I
I would assume it's in the 70s at least, right?
yeah.
Approximately.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
pretty high.
So
Yeah.
you go to bar, but it's not for everybody, Barbary. So,
Right.
we get at CA Bar Style applicants from all different schools, and there's always going to be an applicant in every single school, even the high tier schools, that does not pass. So that's where you really have to research and know what kind of bar prep maybe you should be going into. But of
For
course, the
sure.
law schools are just shoving Barbary down everyone's throat all the time. So you went to Barbary, and what was that experience like? And were you working at the same time?
So initially, no. So I took the bar two times. The first time I wasn't. It was the height of COVID, and I had moved to Connecticut. Another big part of the equation is I have documented learning disabilities.
Hmm.
I have ADHD and I have like
Hmm.
double deficit dyslexia.
Hmm.
So
Thank
in
you
law
for sharing
school,
that. Hmm.
oh no, because it's important to my narrative. When
Yeah.
I applied for the first time, they
Hmm.
did not give me the proper testing accommodations that I needed.
Why?
They, I don't know. I couldn't like they just made up an excuse as to why, and I still have that like rejection later. So when I took that exam,
Hmm.
I failed that exam by only 45 points, which was very close. And I
Very close.
remember when I spoke to you and like law professors, people who really had my back, they were like, that is so close that you should take it in February. And I was like, I don't know if my heart is in it. Like this is a big blow and all these things. So I believe if I had the proper time, I would have finished my essays. There were several essays that I didn't finish. And
Hmm.
learning from you and your course, you're like, if you don't finish that essay, you won't pass that essay. All
Hmm.
these tips that I just didn't know, all
Hmm.
these tips that Barbie didn't give me, I
Hmm.
needed more tailorized help. And that's when I came to you and you changed my life. So, well,
I changed your life. Wow, that is
I'm sure
just,
you did, because like you helped me get over this hurdle that I needed to get I needed to get over to achieve one of my long, dreams.
yeah. So
Yeah.
what would you say, I mean, it wasn't too long ago. What would you say, like, if we were to break it down to like the three things that you can tell listeners that for you really needed to change that you got from CA Bar Style? Like, what really were you needing that clarity on to improve? Do you remember?
For sure. I think um I definitely didn't do enough issue spotting. And I think when I was in law school, and I think you really build on this, one of my professors told me that the facts in the law are like are like puzzle pieces. It's like these facts trigger this issue. This
Mhm.
fact and you also, and I remember being in your course and we would be on Zoom because it wasn't in person because we were in the height of COVID, but
COVID.
like you told us the importance of like issue spotting and also major issues, giving counter arguments for those. Like you
Mhm.
just really, it's really
Maximizing the
about
points.
approach. Exactly. So that
Mhm.
that was the major one. And I
Mhm.
think um also I would say like the like multiple choice, like you really like kind of like kept us on that, meaning
Mhm.
that like some that if you did well and on that section, you could make up for lost points on the essays. It's
Mhm.
all about approach, and I didn't realize that the first time I took it,
The
but when I came,
strategy behind the test.
it's all strategy. And I would say
Yeah.
it's like 40% mental. So the last piece is like, don't doubt yourself. Like, trust yourself, trust in your instructors. I trusted you and you gave me a great pep talk. I remember I was in chambers and I was working because I ended up having to work the like second time I took the exam. But
Mhm.
the exam that I didn't do well on, I had like reviewed and I was getting in my mind like, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I can't do this again. But you spoke to me and you're like, hey, Latrice, look, you are headed down this path and it's the wrong path. If you keep dwelling on that old exam, you are going to lose energy to focus on kicking ass this next time.
I
So
remember
stop.
where I was when I talked to you. I was in the car. I remember I
That
had
was
to
an
pull over.
awesome. I'm telling you, Shauna, like those are like that memory is that'll be a memory that'll stay with me for like the rest of my life. That was one of the most powerful pep talks that I had ever. And you were like, stop now and turn around because you are going the wrong way. Focus on that next exam. And it really you like lit a flame in me. And like ever since then, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get it together. Shauna believes in me. It was awesome.
That is unbelievably humbling. And as I've been doing bar prep all these years, what I've realized a lot of things. But one of the main things I've realized is words are so powerful.
They are.
And whether I make a video and I get insecure and I think like, no one's going to listen to me. Like, what do I have to say? You just put it out there. Right. But when I'm dealing one-on-one with an applicant, the tough love sometimes, right? And
It's really good.
that was something that I had to really work on, because in the beginning of CA bar style, around 2010, when I started it around, I was very like coddling, right? And I never want to put anyone down, because that's not my approach. But then as I gained more and more experience, I realized that students are carrying so much baggage from
Right.
previous, because we're not used to failing things, right? I mean, most applicants that went through law school, they're used to succeeding. And then here comes the California bar exam to go, just kidding, like you're not as smart as you think you are, but it's really not a level of intelligence at all. And so, everyone deals with failure differently. And some applicants really like they can't move. It is like a form of grief because they've given it their all and they have this major loss. But I really do stress, and I love that you remember that. And thank you for remembering that and listening to me, because I
It was
think,
everything.
it's what you pushed, and saying like, you can't keep this on your shoulder. Like, you got to let it go and you got to move forward, or else it's just like because you're going to have hard days. And
Right.
those days you got to be able to, what happens? You have the hard day and then the applicant goes, I'm not going to pass again. They bring it right back to failing and not seeing that name on the pass list. So
Right.
that's where you got to really utilize that state of mind to go like, just because that happened once doesn't mean it's going to happen this time. And
Exactly.
so thank you for listening to those words. Words are powerful. Words matter. It inspires me to keep giving my pep talks and keep, being real with applicants and not just sugarcoating the reality of the situation. So thank you for that. So you took the bar the second time. Now I do want to address, I remember another, because we had a lot of coaching conversations. Of course,
We
there was
did.
tutoring, but I remember a sequence of them. And I remember a day where you were having a really hard time with criminal procedure. I think it was Fourth Amendment, search and seizure. Talk to me about that.
I remember, if I recall correctly, it was either an essay or like a multiple choice question
Hmm.
about, like, you know, um,
Cops.
about cops. So it's
Hmm.
like, if a person runs like a stop sign, but the cop like subjectively thinks that person has crack on them, I'm going to search them because the person ran that like stop sign. That the cop has ammunition to search the car, and I remember reading that or like something to that effect, and it like flipped me out, Shauna. And I remember
That was a
emailing you.
trigger. That was a
It
trigger
was
for
a
you.
trigger. It's like,
Was
oh,
it something that your brother had dealt with? Was it something from what was the trigger? Do you remember, or just,
I think it was George Floyd. It was right after Floyd had passed. It,
mm,
it was right
mm,
after there was this like
got it. Yes, that was
collective
right
height.
around that time. Mhm.
Yeah, it was like collective heightened concern, and then it's just this thought of like, oh well, like police can take advantage of us, and I really do think that that law might be flawed, but right now it is still binding law. And I remember you telling me that like it is still binding law. You have to learn it for purposes of this exam. And guess what? That issue was on our actual exam that year.
Of
So I'm like,
course. Of
of course
course,
it
right?
was.
That's what happens in life, that energy. So reading, and so for Black applicants, African American applicants listening, that I mean, I had never had this issue in bar prep, right? And so it was unique to me. So I really had to take a moment and say, like, how am I, as a white woman, gonna support Latrice here,
Yeah.
right? And be very careful to understand her feelings, which I'll never understand, right? And
Mhm.
how am I going to really form some connection to get you
Yeah.
to keep going and be able, because you had to get through that material, right? I mean, it's on the exam. And
Mhm.
so, I don't recall my exact approach, but I think it was just to listen to you and
Yeah.
really understand, and then just say, okay, this is, I completely can understand how you would feel this way, but it is what it is. The law is like this, and we're just going to like try your best to not attach emotion. And that does happen a lot on the bar exam, by the way, because whether it's abortion and constitutional law,
Right.
whether it's, immigration. Well, immigration doesn't really come up, but, whatever kind of voting rights, right? President, executive stuff. There are a lot of political and race relation issues that come up when you're learning law. And
Right.
so I always tell students, you've got, like, they repealed abortion, and a lot of applicants in class, when I say that, there's a gasp, especially amongst the women.
Yeah.
And I'm not here, this podcast may or may not one day turn political, but at the very least, we have to be human beings, and we
Yeah.
have to understand, or I have to understand, that I have applicants from all different backgrounds and all different walks of life. And if they're feeling a certain way, that is their feelings. And I'm here to support them and help them through that. And so, what I would say to others that are dealing with something like this, like, you got to understand that it's a normal feeling, and it's something that is definitely, you don't have to fight it, but you
Hmm.
also have to do your best to not be emotional, which I know could be impossible in some instances, right?
Right.
And because I've seen, like, constitutional law analysis, right, where it's very emotional, and I'm like, you're not here to, it's not your subjective feelings about the topic, it's
Right.
more just the facts. But proud of you for getting through that. And do you have any tips for how you got through it? Like, how were you able to then separate the emotion and how you were reacting to reading that law and the examples and the practice, to actually then going in and likely writing a passing essay because you passed the exam?
Well, first, I want to say thank you, because I actually still have that email from you. Your first response was, "I'm sorry," and I can appreciate that. You led with, empathy first, and that's what made the, like, big difference for me. Like, you weren't like, "Oh, tough it up." You acknowledged where I was coming from, and that meant the
Of
world
course.
to me. And
Of
here's
course.
the thing: like, my husband is actually 3/4 Italian and 1/4 Jewish. But the one thing I
Mm,
can say about his like, half Jewish mother, you like, Jewish Americans are great allies to Black people, and
yes.
that goes back like hundreds of years, since like
Yes.
the beginning. So
Yes, I wish that we would connect more, like, in the real world on that,
I
and
agree.
understand that, because I
Yeah.
think, like, for me, when I was at USC, freaking cough, when they'll edit it out, hopefully. But when I was at USC, I wrote a paper on the
Yeah.
similarities between Black women and Jewish women, and
I
how,
love
and there was a
that.
book on it. There was a book that, and I don't, it was like an Unruh scholar thing that I did, and I remember, because one of my best friends, I'll never forget, Tanya Cook, a Black woman who I became very close with, coming out of an Orthodox Jewish school where I had only white friends. We formed such a bond right away, and she became my best friend throughout all of my undergrad.
Wow.
And it was like, and so we had actually talked about maybe writing a book one day together. And I actually been looking her up on Facebook, and there's like so many Tanya Cooks. So I don't know exactly, I'm like trying to like decipher. But my point is that, yes, I think there are similarities. And I think what you said is so true. Like, you have to lead with empathy.
Yeah,
And
you
that
did.
is something that only you can do with that work, because most people, whether it's a race issue, a religion issue, it could just be a relationship issue. When someone shares their feelings, the innate response is, you shouldn't have that feeling, right?
Right.
Like, you're not justified in having that feeling. But the truth is, if someone and Oprah talks about this, if
Mhm.
someone has a feeling, that's their justification. It doesn't need to be explained, right?
Right.
They're
Yeah.
having that feeling. It's not for you to disagree, it's for you to acknowledge. And so I'm
Absolutely.
really happy that I was able to do that, and you were able to move forward
Yeah.
with that support.
Yeah.
So, um,
But to
you took
answer
the,
your question, yeah,
yeah.
I kept a journal, like, of the so there was like a
Oh, yeah,
series of
my
laws.
question about how you cope through
Have
that. Okay.
I remember keeping a journal that I still have, that I call my, like, justice journal. And, like, I write
No
down
way.
laws that I want to change eventually. Like, I think it is a bad law to allow, like, cops to operate off of, like, subjective hunches, right?
Mhm.
Even if a
A
person.
reasonable suspicion is what you're getting at. Like, if you see
Yeah, for
somebody
sure.
speeding, that you can stop, and if it raises to probable cause, then the cop can actually search the car, or the person. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, for
Okay.
sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, and, like, I wrote that down, and, like, and then there was, like, the false imprisonment. like the
Mm.
part of torts, right? That you
Mhm.
can hold someone in the back room if you think that they're stealing until the cops come. Like I wrote all of that down. Like I don't think that's a good law. I want to change that. So I still
Are we
think
gonna
about
see
like
Latrice in Congress?
I used to want to. Now Congress is too broken.
I
Someone has
know.
to fix it first, and
I
then maybe
agree. It's so much drama.
I
It
won't do it first.
Yeah, but I can see you in politics. I
Thank
can
you. I
definitely see you in
appreciate it.
politics. So what is life like? So you passed the bar, obviously. You
Yeah.
took it the second time, you got it done. And what has life been like since then?
Life has been good. So
Mhm.
I worked at McGuire Woods. I had the like big law
Mhm.
experience. I'm currently at a boutique firm founded by a former federal judge. It's called
Mhm.
Larson LLP.
Mhm.
I've gotten cases trial ready. I've had some great
What
experience.
area of law are you practicing in?
We do like general litigation, so we'll be on either side of the V, right? Well, we
Mhm.
can do plaintiff work, defense work. I'm currently working on a trial with like we represent like a rich like real estate developer in LA,
Mhm.
and that's
Cool.
I've seen a
But what
lot.
happened to the prosecutor's goal?
I know. So here's the thing: I mean, USC is very expensive. So my goal is, Shana, is to like, hey, I'm gonna stick
Very
it out in
expensive.
private practice for a little bit,
Got it. Got it.
my husband's a filmmaker, so his
Mhm.
he's working trying to figure things out after the strike, and there's some major movement in that
Mhm.
arena. But
Mhm.
I think eventually, like, look, eventually, I want to use my degree to like serve my country and my community and make this world, this country, a better place for everybody.
Mhm.
I'm in a bind. A lot of like mid-level lawyers, and I see some of my friends are like going in house or are still at firms, but I want to be able to like afford the like public service aspect. I really want to, but
Got it. I
I
know, but in reality, we live in Los Angeles,
live in Los
right?
Angeles.
Yeah, we
Yes,
live in Los Angeles, and between student loans and right, all the things that we have to pay for, it's not always easy because I would have loved to maybe, be a prosecutor as well, but
do
then,
that
you
too.
got bills to pay and right, you want to have a nice life. But I know you're going to get there. I have a feeling I'm going to see you in something like
You're such a
TV,
blessing.
politics, something. I'm feeling it. I see it. So, this has been a wonderful conversation,
Absolutely.
emotional conversation. Somehow these podcasts, these episodes I have always take this emotional turn. And and we talk about real things because life is real, right? And I think the biggest goal when I talk to former applicants is to put a face and a story behind the name of the applicant, because a lot of times it's like we take the hardest bar in the country and we go through so much, but like, who are these people? Who are these applicants? And if you can inspire one person, which you definitely will today, you'll inspire many, 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 especially young African American women and men that may think like, I can't do this. Like people were telling you, you may not get that, you may not get that, to
Right.
keep pushing and believing in themselves despite what they're going through. And then you add grief on top of it. I mean, two parents,
Yeah.
like your story is definitely one of major perseverance and
Thank
inspiration.
you.
And what would you say to wrap it all up? Like, where is your strength from? Where do you get your power from on a daily basis? Because you're a
You're
powerful woman. So where do you get that from up here?
that I'm actually tearing up. I'm trying to like hold it in, but um one of the things that really helped me, like I had a my father was a pastor,
Mhm.
but he, I just saw his like community love and just like love for like mankind of all kinds, right? So growing up, like good or bad news, my father would tell me, "You are a Burks. You're smart. You're this. You're that." And even though he's been gone for years now, I can still hear his voice. And when like whether it's good or bad news, I'll
Mhm.
say, "I'm a Burks. I'm a Burks." One of the reasons why
Your last
I
name. I'm a
found
Burks.
yeah, my last name. Yeah,
Mhm.
I ended up keeping my, like married name. I ended up keeping Burks and like hyphenating because I pumped so much identity into whom I am because of my father. I had such a loving father. So it means a lot. And my mom was great too, but he was the one to like give me pep talks. And even though he's gone, I could still hear him. So
You hear him. So basically bringing it back to the roots of the
yeah,
father. that
Yeah.
connectivity, that gives you your power, and you still hear him. And for anyone that's lost a loved one, they're
Yeah.
always with you.
They're always
And
with you.
you can still hear them. And eventually, if you're just new to grief, eventually you
Yeah.
do you can talk to them and have that comfort. Well, Latrice, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful, challenging, inspiring, like every synonym in the book, really. You are a
Oh,
light of positivity, and I can't wait to see what you do in the future. Thank you so much for trusting C Bar Style, and listening to what we had to say. And I'm really looking forward to what you do in the future. Thanks for being on Law Life. I appreciate it a lot.
no problem. You really changed my life. You're one of my favorite people, Shauna. I'm
Right
so
back
grateful
at
for
you.
you.
Right back at
Thank
you.
you,
You changed
sister.
my life too. Love you,
Oh,
girl. All
love you
right.
too.
Have a beautiful day, and congratulations on your wedding. You guys look
Thank you so
very in
much.
love. Very in
Yeah.
love. I see
You know,
all the photos.
I
He
love
looks
it.
like a really nice guy. He's lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. All
Blessing.
right, darling. Have a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Go
Take
on
care.
with your blonde self. Loving it. Talk to you later. Bye, girl.
See you later.